Okay, we are live. All right, welcome to the 12th Annual New Hampshire Film Festival. How's everybody doing? Ow! That's right, Saturday, halfway through. We're in the midst of we call it the Monster Day of the festival, day 3. There's 5 venues, way too many things to choose from, but it's awesome. Something for everybody out there. So thank you for attending this panel. You'll see one of our panelists is missing. They're going to go down the line and introduce all these awesome folks that are coming up. She's coming in a little bit late, so you'll see somebody scooting around the side and tucking in a little bit. But anyway, my name's Dan Hendon, one of the founders and organizers of the event. I just want to thank you here to the old Port Property stage that we have set up here, and our audiovisual sponsors of Feel Creative and AV Technik and Anchorline and Sperry Tents. We have so many great sponsors and supporters this year. It's been awesome. So check out the films and everything like that. Right now, I want to just hand it over to this marketing distribution panel by introducing our moderator, Amy Greenlaw, who's founder of a really neat company called Film Pop that maybe she could talk about as we're introducing everybody. Amy.
Hi, thanks for coming. I just wanted to start off, is my sound good? I want to make sure. I just want to start off by introducing you guys, but actually you'll introduce yourself, talk a little bit that's in your bios, and then at the end of that, tell me what's one of your favorite films.
Of all time?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. But I know there's probably a lot, so you're just going to have to pick one. Wow. Okay. So go ahead, Josh.
Can we start? Can you hear me? So Josh Green, this is like my 5th or 6th. I don't know how many years I've been back, but it's so much fun to come back and see how the festival's grown. So congrats to Dan and everybody. Yeah, it's really, really awesome. Seriously, I recognize some of the same faces. This is on. Can you guys hear me okay? Oh, yeah. I talk loud anywhere. Yeah, I know. I had a personal issue last year. I won't go into that. But it's good to be back. So I wear a number of hats. I have 2 different companies. One is a digital distribution exhibition company called Emerging Pictures that I've been working with for about 10 years. And essentially what Emerging does is it's morphed over the years. We used to be a sales agent and a direct distributor, an early digital aggregator, but now we are a digital cinema network. So essentially we aggregate digital content, independent films, opera, ballet, pop concerts, lots of alternative stuff, classic films, and then we deliver those program files via broadband to servers, which sit at movie theaters, and also cultural institutions, arts places, university auditoriums, all sorts of restaurant screening rooms. We have a network now of about 150 connected theaters. And we're showing all the latest films from all the indie suppliers, so Magnolia, IFC, Sony Classics, Zeitgeist, Music Box. We do show films that are self-released occasionally. We're doing a lot of one-night-only kind of special events where the movies, you probably heard of this, where the movies screen kind of simultaneously around the country, and then you do kind of a live interactive Q&A that's piped in afterwards where people can tweet questions. So that's kind of a fun way and kind of a new platform to still have your theatrical exposure. So that's kind of emerging. And then I have a production company that I started a few years ago with a few partners called Game 7 Films. Have one documentary in the festival, which is the Journey doc, Don't Stop Believin'. And a few others that I've done that are about to come out to market. One of my partners has produced the last 2 Lee Daniels movies, so The Paperboy and Precious, and lots of other things that we're developing at my production entity. So glad to be here. Oh my, wow. Oh man, that's a tough question. I'm gonna go with one of my all-time faves, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Hi, I'm Maureen Masters. I started out in film actually in college. I was a critic, and that kind of actually my love for indie film started in high school, but and then I started writing film reviews, and then became a film publicist in Dallas, and then Philadelphia, and then got hired by Magnolia Pictures in New York just 2 years ago. But I've worked on Magnolia Films for almost 10 years and started their VOD model, started promoting their VOD model, which was, well, we can definitely get into that at some point. Yeah, so I book film festivals, other regional film festivals for Magnolia, and I am director of regional publicity, which covers every market but New York and LA. My favorite film, it's very difficult. Today we'll go with Daisies. Daisies.
tomorrow will be different.
Hi, Erin.
Hi. So my name is Erin Tron. I've been to the festival, I want to say like 4 or 5, I don't know, going maybe 5 years also. And it seems that I try to have a different role every time I'm here, which is really consistent with the rest of my life. So I've done things in the past. I'm essentially a film journalist, and in the past I've covered this festival for The Wire, which is still published here. I kind of cut my teeth writing for New England Film and then edited it, and then went on to edit what is The Independent, which was a print magazine called The Independent Film and Video Monthly for 30 years and is now an online magazine which covers independent film kind of from a national, sometimes international perspective. And, you know, I just do a lot of stuff because I've also freelanced around film journalism for various publications like the Boston Globe. I was interviewed on New Hampshire Public Radio for, you know, like things like that. I do a lot of freelance kind of commentary and whatnot. I've done some film work, and I'm actually here with a film called Love and Other Anxieties, which screened this morning, in case you saw it, and I'm doing the creative programming and distribution of that film. So that's kind of why I'm here today, along with the fact that through The Independent, I've been working on a book about distribution that has been in process for much too long. So it
keeps changing. Exactly.
It just keeps getting bumped. I mean, this is not a lucrative career I've undertaken. Film journalism is very niche, and because of the fact that I really only care about and want to cover independent film, it makes the job all the tougher. So, and then one of the other things that I've done, I was telling Maureen, is I've started to do a lot of, and some of you have seen me do this here, moderation of panels, and also doing a ton of conversations with filmmakers in person, and it's what I'm calling live journalism. So if any of you are familiar with the Dockyard series that happens at the Brattle, it's an all documentary film series. This last summer I moderated that series, so the film screens, the filmmakers are there, and I get to interview them in person, which is just like one of my favorite things to do. I love it. So anyway, so thanks for coming. As a moderator, and then someone who's even done this panel, sorry, Amy, one of the things I always want to know, I'm totally going to shift the gears, I want to know more about you and what you're here for and what you want from us. So we can shift into that. I'm so avoiding the film question. I mean, it's just like the hardest thing ever. I can't even.
Just think about today then.
Yeah, one of.
Oh, just one. I mean, I feel I'm going to say There Will Be Blood only because I was talking about it earlier this morning.
Too. That's crazy.
You know, so, but that's, you know, then I was going to say Revenge, because I've just watched like 20 episodes of Revenge, which is not a movie. It's like a totally cheesy soap opera TV series. But I don't care about rules like this, so.
It's all about you, Erin.
Oh no, is the tape rolling? No.
All right. Definitely we want to talk to you people and keep an open dialogue. We're not here to just talk to you and not have a dialogue going. So we'll jump right in. I'm just going to ask a couple questions to get things going, and then we can open it up. And then we're hoping to end it just a little bit early than 5 because Josh's film starts at 7:25. We're trying to push that to
4:25.
4:25. I'm sorry.
4:30.
4:30, and so we want to kind of run over there. So we're going to keep it moving along. So my question to you, 3, is what are the latest trends in distribution since it's changing like rapid fire? Literally like in the past year, since Maureen, you were here last year, what has changed?
Wow. I mean, for us at Magnolia, it's DCP. Like, it's huge. Huge.
Do people know what that is?
Yeah.
Digital cinema package.
Yes. So basically what that is the film is being delivered digitally to the theaters, which takes out the courier service, which we have always worked closely with. It takes out a lot of middlemen. And it's just crazy because it's a file that is sent to the theater. And I mean, I'm still blown away because the conversion is just happening right now, and all the landmark theaters that we've been working with, they will all be done within 2 months. And it's blowing my mind. And I had like the first problem last night with it. Yeah. And that's also freaking me out.
You mean a technical problem?
It was a technical problem. It was actually not the conversion or the delivery, the digital delivery. It was on the theater side. They had problems with their equipment. So we'll be working out these bugs, and it's scary, and it's happening right now.
Do people know? I can give a brief history of this if people don't know. This is an antitrust case, like waiting to happen by the studios.
It's huge.
Basically, what the studios did is they all got, years ago when they were kind of freaking out about what digital might mean, they all got together and decided on a specification that was going to be the digital spec by which they'd release their movies. And it was a very high-end, very expensive kind of spec, and that was purposeful, so that you couldn't go to AMC and make a deal to have your movie on 4,000 screens. It would have to be something that, very expensive equipment that the theaters would need, and it was going to take years to equip them. Very expensive, hard drives and DCP files that need to be created. So basically, they put that together, and then the theaters, because the theaters needed that product, they needed the 3D product. The studios were releasing more and more things digitally. It was left to the theaters to pretty much figure out how to convert. And these were, at the time, $100,000 systems per theater or per screen. So obviously that was a difficult thing. For the big chains, they could get through it. For mom and pops, it was more difficult. So what emerged were these third-party financing companies called integrators, and they would essentially come in and finance, the digitization of these theaters. And in return, they made a deal with the studios for what's called a virtual print fee. So there would be a fee paid by the studio or by whoever the distributor was to whoever was financing the conversion. Okay, and that fee would be, I think it's about $750 or something like that. So less than the cost of making a print, but still something. So what's interesting now is that anytime, the old platform releases where you'd make a couple prints and kind of ship them to theater, you can't do anymore because every engagement you play through a DCI projector, you have to pay that $750. So you have to pay that every single theater, every single engagement. So what it's doing is it's forcing a lot of the small distributors, and by the way, the studio said, they're going to stop making prints, so they're going to be releasing everything by DCP. So it forced these theaters to make these deals on these virtual print fees, and not only does it hold back the theaters from having full control over what they want to show. There are hidden fees. There are all sorts of stuff there. There's it sets kind of standards for the number of turns that have to happen. So it impacts how long a theater can actually hold a movie because these financiers want more and more of these virtual print fees. So what it forces, Magnolia and all these independent distributors to do is say, okay, I'm going to have to pay $750 per engagement. I can't ship one print around and kind of save money on the shipping. Is it worth it for me to open in this small city? Maybe not. So it's kind of changing the landscape about, and everyone's really freaking out about whether, some of these movies are going to continue to have this platform and whether some of these independent theaters are going to be able to still show what they want to show, which is some of the artier fare. So it's kind of a crazy thing. And the good thing with Emerging Pictures, my company, is we're not DCI. So we play no studio product except for Sony Classics. So we've gone completely into a different system. It's much more inexpensive and efficient. We actually can deliver files over the internet. DCPs they're hard drives that still have to be sent. You can't deliver a DCI file over the internet yet. It's too big a file. You're still shipping something to the theaters even though it's not a big 60-pound print. It's a hard drive. So Emerging, we deliver over the internet. So it's and the files are still high definition. It's still, the average eye can't tell the difference. And we've kind of skirted the studio model, but it's having a lot of ripple effects for theaters especially the small theaters that have to equip and can't afford it. So what do you do? Sorry. It's a long-winded kind of.
We actually are delivering over the internet to landmark theaters. Yeah, we don't.
DCI files?
Not
many people
and
are doing that.
Yeah, this conversation is not like so loopholed, actually. There's a lot of kind of other things bubbling up through the system, which is good. Like we still have 35 millimeter, and we still have 35 millimeter prints. We still make HD cam. Like
You guys do Blu-ray a lot of releases, right?
we do Blu-ray, but that is not we do not send that out. We do not like to play that. That is not what I do. Because Blu-ray, you can easily pirate Blu-ray. So that's not something we like to do. HD cam, I'm good with. DCP, I like. I love 35
things
millimeter.
help smaller independent filmmakers having the DCP? Or no?
I mean, I don't know. I work for a distributor,
Right.
so it's difficult. We work with the final product, and we still have different. We don't just have DCP. I don't think we ever will.
But the cost is
but-
going down too.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know yet. Really, a year from now, I would probably have a clearer opinion on it.
I mean, they cost what? It costs $5,000, $5,000 to make a DCP now. So it's not. I mean, it's much, much cheaper than blowing up a film to 35 and kind of going that route and making prints. But it's still, it's. I mean, Blu-rays are cheaper.
In HD cam too is we can make a copy of it or put something on HD cam for like 300, 350. So
What other? Did you have a question, Chase, or are you good?
I was just going to ask Josh. Now, when you send your files, will they play on a DCI projector?
Yeah, they will.
Oh,
Yeah, it's all this. It's the server. The DCI. You can have a non-DCI server that's plugged into a DCI projector.
so you make
So-
your own files.
Correct.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. So, also, Maureen, you guys do VOD, right? So when you
Yeah.
release a film,
yeah, that's
people can.
right. That model has been going on for quite a while with Magnolia. Almost 9 years now. So, and it started out, I actually was a publicist when we started out with the VOD model, and I thought it was a horrible idea because critics couldn't understand it. Why am I going to review something if it's available on the TV? So now that there's a really clear difference between VOD and theatrical, and that it's two totally separate markets. There are people in small towns that don't get these films or don't have an indie playhouse anymore. So VOD is fantastic for kind of getting the films out there. Sometimes we do a month ahead of time, a month ahead of theatrical. Sometimes we do it simultaneously. But that's never going to change. Our VOD model is really strong for some of our releases, better than theatrical.
So I had a question. I was asking people on Twitter and Facebook if they had questions for you, and one of them was, what do you think is the best way to reach broadcast outlets with documentary programming, and how has it changed now since all the cable channels have kind of gone into reality TV, and is there still a place for traditional documentary TV?
You mean how do they reach them as finished films, or in the early financing stages? Well, festivals obviously are a key component. I mean, sales agents. I mean, there's it's a good time for the business because there's audiences and there's a lot of outlets, but there's a lot of movies. So sales agents still, in my view, have relationships with festivals and relationships with buyers. So can immediately kind of put you into a little bit of a smaller pool. And add some credibility to what's being shown. So I mean, that's pretty much the way to do it. Is to if you get into the buyers festivals or the bigger festivals, buyers will have you on the radar. Again, if you have someone, a sales agent that's repping the movie, they can position the movie for buyers before they see it. They can obviously make calls and try to ensure that people get there. They can help call festival programmers and kind of orchestrate that strategy. So it's and sales agents, there's not a lot of really strong ones, so they're in demand, and they usually charge between 10 and 15% of whatever the sales are. I mean, the trend that's emerged on that front is a lot of sales agents want upfront fees now, so they want a retainer against sales or whatever, which is tough. It's typically has been a speculative thing, but now it's like the business is hard. If you're not getting the big studio, the bigger sales, the sale prices can quickly go towards zero. So, to represent a movie and spend a year or two working on it for a very small amount of money is not a great business model. So that's why reps are asking for fees up front now. But that's, without having those relationships in place, that's, I guess that's the best way to do it. And there are outlets that are still buying docs. The problem with docs is they don't really rate. So some of the places that used to buy a couple like A&E don't really buy them anymore. But still, HBO, the pay networks, Showtime, Epic, Stars, HDNet probably plays docs, obviously, with you guys. IFC and Sundance Channel are no longer. Sundance Channel is probably playing IFC's docs, but I don't know if they're really buying anything anymore. So it's, and then obviously if you have something that has a specific subject matter, the Travel Channel or whatever it might be, you can go more niche. But there are outlets, but not a lot of them.
Your question was about public broadcasting, right? Like PBS or
No.
Oh, just broadcast in general.
And PBS obviously buys docs.
So PBS, maybe some of you in the room know that there's two different series, Independent Lens and POV, and I believe both of those are open call, and so anyone in this room could submit a film as long as you meet the specs that they ask for in terms of length, etc. And then you could also approach PBS station to station. And some filmmakers have actually, even though there's very little money in that, if you have the willpower, it can be a good way for you to go, because there can be small amounts of money if you're able to and willing to do that. So
my contribution to that question would be documentary film festivals. I think they're fantastic. Full Frame is one that immediately comes to mind, but there are a lot. There are
Silver
a lot
Docs,
of little Silver Docs
ones,
is great. Yeah.
IDFA,
True False.
True False.
Aaron, can you talk a little bit about, like, for instance, like what you're doing for this film that you have here, Love and Other Anxieties? Like,
Sure.
what's your role and what kind of things are you doing?
So I came on to Love and Other Anxieties after the film was complete and had its premiere at the Camden International Film Fest. And my friend was a producer, and they needed somebody to help with distribution, and they didn't know what that meant for a film of this scope, which they thought was, knowingly thought was, I guess, what you'd call a small film. And so I came on not having exactly done this before, but having just thought a lot about it and, panels like this, et cetera, and really sat down with the filmmaker and said, what do you want? And what do you want from this film? What are your goals? And not only that, but what do you want next? So much of the work that I've done has been what I'd almost call strategic planning. And it's been strategic planning for the film itself, but also for the filmmaker in her career in a way. So we set out, like, what are the goals? And some were, a theatrical release in Boston was kind of one of the number one goals that we had. X number of film festivals, certain parts of the country that we either thought the film should play in or she wanted to go to for various reasons. And we tried to look at what she wanted in a way, and ask then different questions, because you can just say, I want it to succeed, but that's way too big. And one of the things that I've learned is that, and even in navigating my own career, when anything is supposedly possible, one of the most important things is to figure, you really need to figure out, like, okay, but what do I want to have done by the end of the month? And to do that, to have goals set, is a way of knowing you've done enough. Because the other thing about what we're talking about here, especially with independent projects, is that you can work every minute of the calendar year and still not feel like you've done enough. And there's still more that you can be doing. You could be in 3 places instead of 1, tweeting the whole time nonstop. There's just no end to the work that you could be doing. And so in many ways, what I've done is try to take the, like, big block of wood and work, collaborate with her to figure out, what do you actually want out of this process? And I have to say, we've done it. I mean, we've met and exceeded all the goals we've set for this film so far, and that feels so good because, you know, I'll meet people at festivals and they'll say, "So, do you have distribution?" And we'll say, "No, but you know what? We actually didn't want it at this point. We don't want it right this minute." So you might perceive that as like, "Oh, you've failed," because you're not sure what that means. But we know that's like, no, because we're actually releasing the film in Boston in November, which was like the top thing that we wanted to do. You know, we want to get it reviewed by the Boston Globe. That is hopefully going to happen. So, I mean, that's one of the biggest pieces of takeaway I could give you, is to just really be clear about what you want to do. When I was working on my book, that's still in progress, I interviewed Dan Hannon. He was very nice enough to let me talk to him as a case study for his short, The Pond. And he was so clear. I have to point to Dan as an example of being someone who was so clear about what he was doing going into that project, what he wanted from it. And I just, I think that makes all the difference.
So did the director or producers have a line item for something like of what you're doing, and they had a budget for that?
Yes.
Yeah, well, there's that new term. Did John Reese coin that term, the PMD?
And that's exactly.
Or I don't remember.
It's yeah, in many ways, my role is also being called now producer of marketing and distribution. The fact that I've been a journalist to this point has made me not want to adopt, and I still actually somewhat refuse the label of marketing, because those two things are in conflict. So I call it distribution and creative programming, because frankly, with this film, our goal has never been sales. Sales is just not even. It just happens to be the case with this project that that's not what we're doing, and that's not what I'm doing. So it's something very different. So by creative programming, we want to reach certain groups of people. We want to reach, for example, therapists. So one of the things I've done is research conferences where therapists will be, or places where we're going to reach a lot of different people. So for example, at the Coolidge, they have a series called Off the Couch, which is something that the Boston Psychoanalytic Society facilitates conversations after film. Both Lyda, the director, and I are like totally into post-film dialogue. It's like probably like the second goal on our list of things we want to do. We want to have an experience with the film. That is in some ways more important and more realistic than, having a profit at the end of the day. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm thinking about how do we have experiences with this film. It's not, it's not about the bottom line. Although I know that that's not that's uncommon and unique, and that's actually part of what's been great about the project. So
that's a great answer. Thank you. One other question I got from Dana Viscotti, and she wanted to know how. Let me just pull it up. So I'm asking the ratio of production budget to marketing budget. How is that going these days? Like, are they now, it used to be production, a little bit of marketing, and now is it more, I know you don't like the term marketing, but, marketing.
Sorry.
And production, that was her one question. And then she also wanted to know about branded content in shorts or feature films. So how when thing is a branded piece of content, how is that getting distributed? Anyone?
I can start with I guess the latter, the shorts. Just what's the distribution landscape for shorts? Is that the bottom line of what the question is, or
branded?
Branded meaning it's sponsored by a corporation,
BMW, yeah.
I guess it depends on the outlet that's commissioning the short, whether they're using it for their own website or. I don't know that there's. I guess there could be commercial distribution for something, but I think they have particular uses for the branded content. But I guess that's not my forte.
Not mine either.
All right.
Anybody want to know about that? Anyone? Or does anyone know about it?
Yeah.
What was the first part of the question?
The first part was about the marketing budget versus production budget, and how
Yeah,
the
I mean,
level.
with the films that I'm either working with on or reporting on, there's just not budgets. There's just not. I mean, most of the people I know, they don't have they don't have money for this stuff. I mean, they're paying money out of their own pocket to get something, to get the HD cam made to actually be at a festival like this. So, it's people doing it themselves. It's that's not the scope of where my focus is. So. Although
Yeah. I deal with a finished product, so our marketing budgets vary depending on. Usually, it's very early in the process with how much we've acquired the film for, how much we're willing to spend on it. It deals with yearly budgets, but I've really started kind of. It's almost my forte now, grassroots, which is really costing us almost nothing. And that's a lot of Twitter and word of mouth and early festival screenings and things like that really don't cost as much as a big campaign, in which I used to do when I worked on the agency side with Sony and Fox and things like that. So, and there was this very slow progression towards not spending as much money on these marketing campaigns. And almost every studio now has some kind of niche and grassroots.
Yeah, and I guess there's two types of marketing. There's the pre-marketing, and then there's the marketing when the film's released. So you do want a budget. I mean, if you're going to be going to festivals and you're going to need deliverables for festivals, if you want to cut a trailer, if you're going to need a poster or postcards, stills, you should always have stills. I mean, there's a cost for putting together even the materials probably for the pre-marketing stage to give you the best shot of giving the movie its exposure and building its platform. And then obviously if you're going to build in, I mean, some filmmakers do build into their budgets, P&A is kind of going away as a term, but the prints and advertising kind of, monies to actually release the film. And, obviously you can spend a lot of money releasing a movie, or you can do it really bootstrap it. But gosh, even to open a movie in New York, you're talking minimum. I mean, you can four-wall a theater for $10,000, but then it's if you want advertising and a publicist and to create materials, and again, tape formats, add that on top of it. I mean, I think bare bones, to do all of that, $50,000 probably to give the movie any kind of a platform in New York, and that's a drop in the bucket. So some people put a lot more in there, those numbers if they can raise it. Others put nothing. But it's good to at least be able to control your own destiny and have that line item there if you can.
Yeah, and I have to say that I've seen, I guess I've been doing this 12, almost 13 years now, but I've seen the traditional platform change. It used to be like New York, LA, and then, the big cities in between. Now there are some that don't open New York and don't necessarily open LA, and it's kind of the in-between, which is a lot less money, too, depending on your market and, your goals for the film.
I'm glad that, I didn't mean to make light of the fact that there's no budgets out there, because everything does cost something. So even though I said, there's no budgets, that doesn't actually mean, everything costs something. Almost every festival you apply to costs money. You have to ship your own films often. There's tons of costs. So I did misspeak in that way, but I guess what I meant was that people are doing it for as little as they humanly possibly can, and they're covering it in ways that is, it's going in and not necessarily, they're not necessarily planning or going to be able to recoup.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think of regional festivals as a lesser cost, and that's coming from myself at Magnolia seeing the costs as compared to larger festivals or advertising campaigns and things like that. So I think they're a really good platform for films.
So I'm just going to open it up now to everybody who wants to ask questions so we can create that dialogue. And we still have about 40 minutes, so yeah.
I have a quick comment for Maureen and then a question for Josh. Get used to the problems with the
And you are?
I'm Michael Rossi. Before I got into production, I was a theater manager for a number of years and a projectionist as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
We met before.
Yeah. I know him. But I lived through the transition from 35 millimeter to mixed 35 and digital, and then all digital, and now I'm reading it. What is it? Fox guess
Yeah.
are going to follow suit. But I
scared.
also know from having worked that there are tons and tons of problems with that system.
Yeah.
But not all of them are fixable from your end.
I'm terrified.
I know.
Yeah, I'm really terrified. I actually, I had a director at a festival last night, and there was a problem with the DCP, and they weren't able to show the last 30 minutes of her film. And I get frantic calls, and there's absolutely nothing I can do. And but me as like a problem solver, I'm just like, okay, we have to be prepared in the future. What the hell can we do? And really, besides someone carrying Blu-ray in their bag, I don't know what to do.
Well, I can tell you what happens on the theater end.
Yeah.
When it was 35 millimeter, we'd say, there's a problem in theater 14. You look at it, oh, look, it's on fire. Oh, it's taped back together.
Yeah, I've seen that happen.
But now it's
Yeah.
there's a problem with this auditorium, and you're just like, let's call tech support, but there's only one tech guy for all of New England.
Yeah, and it's even crazier. They had the director and a bunch of people in the booth trying to figure it out, and they just called it like it was. It was Twin Cities Festival in Minneapolis. And I do not blame anyone. It was actually a freak thing with the equipment, and no one can really blame anyone associated with anything. It's just something that happened, and I definitely want to look deeper into it to see if there's absolutely anything we can do.
There was just another bit happened at the New York Film Festival
And
with a
Sundance.
big filmmaker who apparently never, I'm trying to remember what it was, who never comes to his own screenings and came and it didn't work.
hear
Yeah,
that.
it was. Yeah, I forgot which movie it was now.
Woody Allen? Was it?
No, it wasn't Woody Allen. Man, it'll come to me. But yeah, no, you're right.
yeah.
It's and a lot of these DCPs, they're key systems, right? So there needs to be like a code or something, and so there's lots of areas for it to break down on both ends, I think. But
I was actually hoping it was human error along the way, and unfortunately they couldn't narrow it down to anything like that.
Isn't it also the case that they don't have menus exactly, so that you can't kind of find, even if you solve the problem, you can't.
It along.
Yeah, unlike our home DVDs,
Yeah.
which is
So why
where
don't they
with the
have
film, you could
backup
just
players, like a backup Blu-ray player?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was hoping, and that was my first question. I said, well, what can I talk to the manager? What's the backup here? And I initially just thought Blu-ray. Like, but there's got to be something. And
Yeah. Well, I know that the big chains just removed their backup. I think you might have had something in that area too, because you do the
that's
DCP
terrifying.
networking.
yeah.
So like Regal removed all of their additional projectors because they wanted to put everything through that main digital.
Yeah.
You know, the $100,000 thing instead of the.
Well, and some files are now they're getting piped over satellite, to some multiplexes, and then eventually I think maybe Landmark's doing it via internet, but eventually the internet's probably going to get really good, and we're trying to create these things we've coined like skinny DCPs, which create some kind of a smaller file size, to be able to get it across lines. That'll make things a lot easier. But yeah, there's still inherently going to be problems with digital. These are computers.
Yeah.
I mean.
see side by side.
If this failure last night was one downloaded over the internet, or was it a package?
I can't say yet. It was like the film was just finished, like 5 days before they added like extra cards. It was a documentary. So I'm still like looking into it. It's a curiosity of mine right now. I'm really like trying to figure out what we can do. But the filmmaker was there, and it was a documentary, so she could easily tell them the end. It was,
Hey now.
there was a long conversation, and
I mean, did they offer us another screening?
yeah, of
Yeah.
course, we are definitely offering them another screening.
Yeah, that's the other issue is like obsolescence. It's like people are paying all this money to convert these theaters, and are they going to come out with new specs? Are the projectors? What's the shelf life of these? Expensive projectors? Are people going to have to 5 years from now, redo the whole?
Right,
It's
and
scary.
We've had many conversations at Magnolia, just about how we have to make all the other formats as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So the expenses are really great right now.
I kind of had two quick questions. I was curious, Josh, you had mentioned earlier kind of like the importance of like a sales agent for a filmmaker. It's like, how do you go about finding a sales agent? How do you know if you're qualified?
Yeah, it's good question. I mean, some of them wait around and see what gets into the festivals first. You know, so say, well, you get into Sundance, then give me a call. Of course, that's their, you know, and then they don't have to look at all that stuff in advance. I mean, you can figure out who these people are. I mean, I'll tell you, there are lists. Festivals send out lists. I mean, there's not a lot of them that are really, really credible. I'm happy to give you all the names of the people that do it, and then you just try to get them to watch the movie in advance if you can. Because again, if they can champion it, then they can call the festival programmers and help you, help you to orchestrate that strategy. If not, you may have to submit to festivals and hope that the movie stands on its own and gets in, and then you can navigate it from that point. But it's not the only way to get to buyers, but it's just it cuts out the fat and kind of puts you in the right light, and there's a price to pay for it. I mean, the other thing with sales agents is keep in mind they're incentivized for a quick deal and they're incentivized for a big money deal. So if your goals are not necessarily the biggest sale price right up front, you got to be weary that they're going to try to drive you in a direction where that's the case, as opposed to something else: size of release, number of eyeballs, advancing a social cause. It's about money for them. So you just got to be careful that you understand that as you get into business with them. But it's it's tough to get those guys to come on board. There's no doubt.
Would you say, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Would you say that the whole profession, if you will, of sales agents has there been more abuse in a way of people in the last 5 years,
Sales agents
filmmakers
abusing filmmakers?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not always intentionally, but just because it is so all unknown.
Yeah, well, because they're charging money up front, a lot of them now, and no matter, given what the sale of the movie's probably going to be, it's not going to justify it. So now, granted, if your goal is get into festivals and get the movie some exposure, and you think that they can do that, and it's a little bit of a loss leader, then sure. But sure, I think you have to be really careful that you have the right expectations when you're dealing with them, and then you're both on the same page for what the strategy might be, and what you got to convey what you want out of the movie. And the good news with a sales agent is that they don't sign the deal; you guys do. So they can bring you whatever options they can bring you, but it's up to you, really. So you just got to kind of know that, and if they're pointing you in one direction, and there's something else that you need to investigate, then you just got to go down that path. But it's
Sorry,
yeah.
The second part of my question was, I was just curious. I watched a couple documentaries recently, Press Play Pause and the Side by Side.
Yeah.
And I was curious if with your delivery format, I'm a fan of it. I was at the movies last night, not here. I was somewhere else, and as a kid, I can't remember on a Friday night going to the movies and it not being packed.
Yeah.
And do you ever worry about the possibility of the delivery system essentially destroying the actual theater business, and if it doesn't destroy itself with this delivery?
I mean, I think there's always going to be room for a theatrical audience because people want to experience these things in a communal way on a big screen and leave their house. And but there's no doubt it's gotten a lot harder with other platforms and how expensive it can be to do it. And there's no doubt that some of these mom and pop theaters around the country that can't afford to convert to digital and can't get one of these virtual print fee deals to finance it might have to shut down. So it's it is rippling the business. And again, some of these theaters, it might not make sense for Maureen can speak to it, but maybe it doesn't make sense for Magnolia to pay $750 to open in X market because they just don't think it's worth it, economics. So that theater might not, unless they can play another format or something. Maybe that theater doesn't get to play the movie they want to show. So I think it's
that's already happening.
Yeah, it's sad, but. I don't know. I mean,
cost is outweighing the risk.
Yeah.
And our platforms have changed. Even if you go to our website and click on a film and go to play dates, they are all over the board for each film. And it's kind of a really early marketing strategy that we develop for each film. And that's why I said, not every film we have, it might not open New York and LA because the cost is so expensive.
And our model, Emerging's model, sorry to interrupt, is trying to skirt that, obviously, because we're not DCI. So there's a way that theaters can still get access to all our movies, without these VPFs and whatnot. But if the theaters that we're in business with then would have to not play studio movies. So it's this trade-off. I mean, with a cultural institution that we're in business with, okay, they don't want to play Hollywood movies. They want to play the indie stuff, opera, ballet. So there are going to be all these alternative venues that can keep these movies, going where the economics make sense. But any of these theaters that want to play the Hollywood product and that's what they survive on for their sustenance, it's a bit of a pickle.
My name is Suzanne Hillary, and I'm on the panel tomorrow for music. But music is a major thing, and I just had this crazy conversation with the head of EMI on publishing, heads of BMG on publishing, because I'm constructing these step deals for filmmakers, and what I'm putting in on Fairhaven that's here screening is for stars that just pick them up. I'm trying to kind of parlay that to a promotional deal. It's the same to me as a festival because it's not bringing them any money. And I'm getting like the head of BMG going, promotional, are you effing kidding me? And I'm like, no, I'm not. There is no more money on a step deal here for you guys. So what I'm trying to do is get a transparent understanding of the new format of distribution and sales as it affects my filmmakers, because in the end, I'm part of this huge production budget. And these, pretty famous songwriters and people around the world that you just have to explain. Listen, and I'm in the long run of independent filmmaking myself, and just saying, listen, we have to deal with this, and I'm the one telling BMG and EMI and these guys, listen, this is promotional. We'll take the step and we'll keep it for festival and for VOD to stars, or the last documentary, the other one I just did for ITVS and PBS. And so there's no money there. I mean, am I correct about this as I'm talking to the major publishers in the music business on my side, that there isn't a huge amount of money to these filmmakers at the end for distribution? Mark, I mean, there really isn't, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, on average, it's not a lot of money filtering back. Obviously, it depends upon the scenario, on the movie and the deal. But yeah, if you're not selling to a studio, I mean, if Magnolia really wants your movie, they can pay real money for it, and clearly they do. But if you don't get one of those rare, bigger deals, the deals out there are little to no advance, and mostly geared maybe towards digital portals, because DVDs kind of
Right. There are a lot of first-time and smaller filmmakers that don't have a theatrical release, and they are still making a name for themselves, I'd like to say. But it's just the landscape has really changed. It's really changed, and it's taking me a while to get used to it. It's taking us all a while to kind of get used to. And I love that Aaron was talking about working with a filmmaker that doesn't even have theatrical, like a huge sale on as their end result. That's amazing to me. That makes a lot of sense to me.
it's exciting creatively, honestly.
Yeah, creatively.
Yeah,
So cool.
exactly.
Yeah.
It is cool.
Okay, so my name is Brian Gregg, an attorney, and I've been writing a screenplay lately, like everybody. And okay, so here's two questions. The first one is, so I've got a step outline that I've been working on. That's several thousand index cards, okay, and sorting it all out and doing all this stuff, to write a proper screenplay. It's taking me forever, but it's getting good. And it's still not freaking done yet, right? So I'm working. And I'm thinking, all right, now I'm ready to consolidate this thing into a proper format. And the question I have is what format to put it into? And mainly that comes out into the following question. Thinking about distribution backwards, like you're supposed to do.
Is that Christy? Yay! You made it.
I apologize.
Okay. Go ahead, sorry. No, well, this is Christy Cashman, Christy Scott Cashman. Thank you for coming.
Thanks. I'm so sorry. I'm so late.
That's okay. So now we're just kind of taking questions from the audience. So go ahead, Brian.
I'd like to hear, I'm sorry, but I'd like to hear from Christy, like that intro that everybody did.
Oh, sure. So give her a second to just, why don't you ask your question? Ask your question, let her settle, and then we'll go back if you want.
Are you saying that you've got a screenplay, or you're going to, and you're going to stop there, and you want to try to find distribution, and how do you do it at that point?
Well, actually, no, because I haven't formalized the story into a feature film screenplay because I don't want to waste my time. And so I'll only do that if I think to myself, well, it's going to be good enough that it possibly could get reasonable.
So you want to shop around an idea.
Actually,
So you don't want to, okay, I don't know you, but you're telling me you don't want to waste your time writing something that you want someone else to buy. Like, that seems like a tall order.
That's an interesting reading of what I said, but that's actually not what I mean. What I mean is, before I finish the script, I want to think about how I'm going to get this movie made and how I'm going to pay everybody and go on to my next thing. And the question is whether to do that as a feature film or to do it as some kind of episodic format, which is to say TV or web. And honestly, the reason I'm here is to find out, is there any hope at all of getting theatrical distribution or something of the kind, or should I just say, well, the low advances and the other sort of market difficulties would suggest go another.
Well, what kind of movie is it? What's the genre? What's the?
Paranoid political thriller.
I mean, part of it's just doing research in terms of other comps that see what they've done in the marketplace. You can figure out what box office has been, what production budgets have been in some cases, and seeing who's distributed these things and looking at it that way. I mean, obviously you won't know till you know, but if it's a commercial genre and it's a good script, you never know. I mean, you're probably not going to sell it up front. Well, I mean, if you do you want to direct, you just want to sell this thing, or you're
No,
you're not.
I want to direct it.
Okay, that's if it's that's a taller order as far as getting a traditional buyer involved at an early stage. I mean, obviously, for a distributor to pre-buy a movie, got to be a really great package with a great director, typically.
It's pretty,
Start,
it's
yeah,
pretty
that's
difficult.
yeah.
Okay, so maybe just to be more specific. So writer director with a paranoid political thriller. Now, given the realities of somebody saying, well, you're nobody, and so I'm just wondering, for that specific, what would you suggest as a strategy? Somebody who's got, I've gone, made media workshops, film school, whatever, and I have this project that I want to write it and I want to direct it, and I want people to see it in some theaters, but I'm not expecting it to be, in 2,000 screens or whatever. So that's kind of my shtick, and that's why I'm at this panel, is to find out what would you all suggest as an approach to that?
I mean, there are genre distributors that you could, and that might take a look at, at some kind of a synopsis, kind of a short version of what you have, or, distributors do take projects at all stages. And so it would really be, just like Josh said, a matter of finding other similar projects that you think are close enough, finding out who distributed those projects, and then finding out what their processes are in terms of approaching them. You could be on the computer tonight and sending something to 10 or 12 places, possibly.
And shoot something. I think the one story that popped into my mind was the Saw guys that shot one scene and had a treatment for it and sold it based on that. And I don't know what they had done before, if that was their first feature or they had done something that gave the financiers confidence that they could execute it. But if that's what you want to do it. Find a way to do it.
Just do it.
Christy, welcome. Could you give everybody a little bit about your background, and then at the end of that, we were asking everybody to say what their favorite film was.
Oh, okay.
Just a film. Doesn't have to be the film. A film.
Let's see. So my background is I started by doing a short film, wrote, directed, and produced a short film. That was in 1999. And from there, got a little bit more involved with getting parts in acting and that kind of thing, and while also looking for projects to produce. And so from that time until now, I've been involved with about 15 to 20 different projects and worn different hats with each one. Most recently, I wrote and produced The Love Guide and acted in it, which was with Parker Posey. And before that, I was an executive producer on The Kids Are All Right. And then I don't feel like listing them all, if that's okay, but that gives you an idea. And
do you have a production company?
Yeah, my company's called St. Air Productions. Yeah. And so that's my background. And what was the other question? Oh, my favorite film. I love, you know what I love, As Good as It Gets. I love the writing in it. I think it's so clever. I think it's got a great heart. And I'd love to be able to one day turn out a film kind of comparable to that, I'd say.
Great, thank you. Back to the floor.
Hey, my name's Gus. I'm really low budget, really independent. I mean, I fund my film from my pizza paychecks. And I mean, I do a lot of stop motion animation, and I'm doing it with silver solder and oil-based clay from Walmart.
Cool.
Cannibalizing erector sets and whatnot. Is it feasible for me to press my own discs, bring them out, and are there any regulations against distributing them through stores like locally? Like if I went to Bull Moose and said, hey, can you guys set this on the desk and then give me kickbacks from it? Is there any regulation against that? Do I have to?
don't think
No,
so.
no.
Yeah,
DVDs are really cheap to
You
make.
can just sell them on your
Gosh.
website if you
Yeah,
wanted
can.
to.
I mean, that was always the great thing about DVDs. The margins were so good. It cost less than $1, 50. I don't know what it costs now if you're making them in bulk. You sell them for whatever you're going to sell them for, $10. You know, it's a good margin there. So absolutely, go hawk your wares, man.
And I have one more question. With these setups, these digital projector setups, is there any other format that can be done through those? Like if I bring them digital copies of stuff, is there any way that they can project digital copies of things, or is it?
Well, the projector, any deck can plug into the projector, any digital video format. So a DVD player, an HD cam player, a digibeta deck. It doesn't, you know, the DCP file will be a hard drive that plugs into the projector, but the projector, you can source any other digital format really there. Yeah, so, I mean, assuming they have the deck to play it.
Yeah. Anyone else we can make happy?
It's funny at Magnolia, we're getting really organized about what's at our theaters that we normally play with, but that is always changing as well. And we're starting to kind of keep track of what they do have available at that theater. So, you know, if in the chance there's an accident or something like that, we can send 2 of something. Yeah, I'm still worried about last night, obviously.
No, but the issue is, though, if it is one of these DCI projectors and they have a VPF deal, you'd still have to pay that $750, even if you're playing a Blu-ray disc or DVD. So that's the rub with some of those situations. It doesn't really matter what format it is. It might be cheaper for you to make a DVD to play it, but you're still going to have to pay that VPF. So.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation about this last night, and I work with Lauren Greenfield for Queen of Versailles, and she's made shorts, and she's been approached about, you know, something for TV, and that crossover to me is just a no-brainer. I think it's happening a lot now, like TV features and theatrical full-length documentary features. I think there's not a whole lot of distinction or distinguishing differences between them. I don't know. I don't think it's really that different.
I think it depends on the kind of doc. Like, if it really is kind of, I mean, the docs that are more cinematic and more 3-act structure, like, you know, that might play like a narrative, and there are a lot more of those now. Maybe someone will have more faith. I mean, obviously working with actors and it's a different setting. But yeah, there's no doubt that there's more crossover now. I mean, talent is talent. I think still agents probably, you know, are still putting people in categories a little bit more, but I think it's the walls are starting to break down, especially as more and more docs are successful. And again, talent's talent again.
Yeah, and docs are just kind of hugely successful now. Our Queen of Versailles has broken records, and Jiro Dreams of Sushi broke as many records. So, I mean, docs are really big right now.
There's actually a couple of local-ish filmmakers that are working up in Maine that did docs and are now doing a feature. And they're making a feature called Blue Potato in Maine, if you're familiar, if you know Gita and Aaron. So you might want to just check out their trajectory, like what they've done and where they're going, and I think that they may also be in production on a documentary right now too. So they've got many irons in the fire. The project they're working on is called Blue Potato, which is a narrative feature. The documentary that they did before this was called The Way We Get By.
Great film, yeah.
Another question for something that Josh had mentioned in passing earlier, the antitrust lawsuit waiting to happen. Is that rumbling? Are people gathering support for that idea?
You know, it comes up, but I don't know that there's any formal kind of action. I mean, there is this conference that happens right before Sundance called the Art House Convergence, and that's become a really wonderful organization for independent theaters to air their you know, concerns and kind of focus on best practices and figure out how to approach these things. And you know, for a few years it comes up that you know, that maybe they should try to formally do something, but it just never takes on. I think people are trying to stay in business. You know, it's like I think it's just they're trying to deal with the challenges in front of them and stay alive. And so I don't know if that's a fight that's actually going to happen or not. But it's.
It wouldn't be unprecedented, right? At the beginning of film in America, the studios owned the exhibitors.
That's right. Yeah.
So there was a lawsuit that ended that.
Yeah.
Does anybody feel that we're kind of approaching that point?
I think I don't know that there's any I think they're trying to find solutions, you know, again, just to kind of stay in business. And, you know, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. I don't see anything formal right today that's close.
Any other questions?
I got one more.
Okay.
Is there any way to encrypt my DVDs to make them
definitely.
pirate? And
Yeah.
what is it?
That's something to Google later.
Yeah, it is. You need to figure out how to watermark them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you how to do it. I just know that's what we have to do.
I have a question just about kind of the more passionate art side of things and the business and kind of how that's mitigated, or you have passion for something, you're dealing with artistic people and people who are in love with making movies and whatever it is, and then you have the business side of it. For you guys, how do you each personally feel about kind of having that dichotomy? How do you kind of negotiate that with yourselves?
Christy?
It's a good question. In terms of film business, film being the art, and then the business side of it, how do you, well, they are in a way, two different things, but I would say that if you don't have a knack for the business side, it's not the right business in a way, or if you don't have a partner who is. I think the days of the starving artists are kind of over. That there was a romance about that is no longer. I think you got to be willing to get out there and work. I mean, it's. I mean, you might be starving and you might be an artist, but what I mean is that I feel like there were some people who thought that was kind of a romantic thing to do, and it's not, because what it really means is you don't have the business side where you really can stand up for yourself. In that environment, and I think that's so important, and it's so different now, and it is part of the film world, is to be a business person for yourself. So, and you got to figure it out some way. But the interesting thing is, I think there's an art to that as well. There's an art to business too. So, when you can figure out how to apply it in an artful way, or be different maybe and unique in that way, then I think it's you can be a double-edged sword. You know, I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know, and I think it's a continuing journey, as is art, because it's always, the landscape's always changing. Yeah, it's always changing technologically and in every way. So it's just it's important, I think, to be malleable like like that, but also to not say I'm not a business person. You know, I think you can't do that any longer. So I hope that helps. I don't know. I would like to touch on what you had mentioned, the gentleman in the back, about how you start to shop your project. I had always been told, and if I were in a room like this, 10 years ago, somebody did say, you don't have anything until you have something on the page. You don't have anything until you have a script. That's the real estate of the business, in a way. That is what you're trying to sell. And it's hard enough to write a script and get somebody to sort of see your vision, even though you've written the whole script. But if you try to write, you've got to be tremendous to sell a treatment, and you have to have such an ability to be talk about being a business person, to market yourself and your idea. If that's all you have, your best tool is to have the discipline to sit down and write a script, and then go and do about 5 drafts after that. But that's just, I think it's helpful to just say, to know that is part of it, is to have that discipline and sit down and write it. And even if you don't feel like it's, if you're doing the best job, it's such a great learning, it's a tool. It's a great thing to have in your toolbox, the fact that you took the time to do it, So somebody once told me that, and I took their advice, and I did it. And I'm not saying I was a brilliant writer. Anything that I did was brilliant, but it was such a great learning experience. I've grown so much from that experience. So.
Very cool. Any other questions? Bri, do you want to follow up?
I'll make this brief. Well, actually, okay, all right. So my question is, regarding, Josh, you said that, actually, you got a film kit too. I'll just hold it.
It's all right. I've seen it about 4,000 times.
I'm just giving him an update on the time.
You said there are some independent filmmakers who market through your company, Merging Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Who are they? How do they come to you, I guess, is what I want to know.
Yeah, very easy. We're easily, everybody sends us movies where our contact information is on the site. I can give it to you. I mean, but the tip, because we only have limited bandwidth for how many things we can show and how many things we can encode, and obviously we're creating this menu of content for our theaters, so it's an important kind of curating mechanism that we want to offer things to our theaters that we think is going to be successful. So obviously we're our main clients like Magnolia and Sony Classics and IFC, we're pumping through most of their stuff. With an independent film that doesn't have distribution, that's maybe being self-released, in a lot of cases we'll wait to see how it opens in New York. So we kind of will rely on the filmmakers to put it out and prove the case as far as what the reviews might be, or the business, or even if they open outside of New York, just some case for how we can market this to our theaters. So we do look at a lot of different films, but it's just again, unless we're confident that there's there are enough hooks for our theaters to market it, that the film has enough of a platform, it's hard to program it.
So do you think that the industry is going to go kind of more short run in the theaters and then move towards the type of platform? Like I had a friend this year that made a movie called The Art of Flight, and it broke a lot of records on iTunes and stuff like that, but they were sold out across the country, but it was like 1 week and that was it. So
I think it's been moving in that direction. Maureen can comment from Magnolia's standpoint, but windows are shortening because, first of all, there's a lot of movies and exhibitors. If something doesn't perform in the first week, it's out. Like there's a lot of films waiting in line. So that pressure is there, and theatrical is expensive. So what distributors want to do is it's all about the other platforms, the ancillaries. So you want to get it to VOD either simultaneously, either before the release, after the release. You want to get it to the platforms that are going to make money. So theatrical's really become a commercial for cable VOD now. You know, before it used to be a commercial for DVD. But you know, obviously some films break through the clutter and have a life. I mean, it still happens. I mean,
it definitely still happens, but the window is so short now. It's shortened dramatically. So yeah, on average, a film like take this waltz that we released recently. It was probably in theaters like two weeks, and that's Michelle Williams and Seth Rogen.
Some theaters
longer in New York, LA, like the larger cities, but on average, just a couple weeks.
Some theaters we're working with that want to play things once. You know, I mean, now with digital, when you can actually take a screen and multiplex it. You know, if it's truly digital. So you want to, you're programming screens now like a TV network. Every Tuesday night is this. Every Saturday morning is this. It's moving in that direction, unless you have, you know, the bigger films that can withstand a theatrical window and kind of make it worthwhile.
At Magnolia, we're doing a lot of one-off screenings that we didn't normally do in theatrical windows at all. So.
What's the business sense behind that in terms of it'll get some buzz and then people will buy it?
Yeah, and it's actually, well, now we're considering it kind of buzz for VOD. And like Josh said, that it used to be for DVD. But the windows between theatrical and DVD are also shortened, so it helps a lot. But usually when that happens, it's a theater coming to us saying we have a lot of interest in this film, or there are people in our community that want to see this film, and it's a very close dialogue that's happening when one-offs happen for us.
So that's interesting, because there was a trend a couple years ago that you could really want to see a film and have hosting parties, you know, and have a party, like you pre-sell the tickets, go to the filmmaker, and the filmmaker makes their own screening kit and sells the screening kits. Yeah.
And isn't like Tug? You know, aren't there these portals now where these kind of where it measures kind of the demand, and then once it hits a certain point, you get a screening of a movie. So there are new portals that are kind of pushing audiences into theaters as opposed to kind of the other way around, or pulling, push. I'm confused.
It's definitely a pull-push.
What is the DVD? I mean, isn't the DVD exceptionally low now? Isn't it all VOD pretty much, or?
We do both. I mean,
we
do
DVD
both.
Is still.
We do. It's earlier I was saying our VOD is sometimes at the same time as theatrical.
Yeah.
It's sometimes a month before theatrical. And then DVD on average is 3 to 4 months after theatrical. So it used to be much a longer time period between theatrical release and
But DVD sales are still.
Ours are still, I mean,
good.
they're still good. We're still doing them, yeah.
Interesting.
Although I would be curious to look at actual numbers, like comparing VOD and DVD.
Well, and a lot of the standalone DVD companies have gone out of business. There aren't a lot of like